So as a coach, I can't tell you how many times I've sat in conversations with men who are telling me that they are in a career that they hate, in a relationship that they don't want, that they feel trapped and stuck in their life. And if that sounds like you are not alone. There are so many of us who feel that way. I too used to feel that way. I ended up in a career that I thought I wanted, that was not fulfilling me, that was making me sick and miserable. And why was I there? Because at some point earlier in my life, I thought it solved my equation. I thought it provided me with the answers that I was seeking, but it turns out that definitely wasn't the case. So hey y'all, if we haven't met before, my name is Kalen. I am an ecstatic spiritual coach. I work with people around the world to help them come home to themselves, live an authentic, joyful life, and find a sense of integration and well-being. I host this YouTube channel where we explore these things: meditation, spirituality, sex and sexuality, and how we bring all of that together. I've also written a couple of books that you can check out, and please do subscribe, forward this to anyone you think will be finding this valuable. So like many people, I decided what I wanted to be in the world when I was probably around 8 or 9 years old. I did my first community theater play, and I came alive in a way that I hadn't in social situations prior. I was always a very creative kid. I was always building things and creating art and making sets and making movies and acting in roles and creating home films and projects like that. So it wasn't surprising that when time came to look for university, I was searching for something that would allow me to grow those skills further. Everyone in my life was really encouraging of me studying acting or filmmaking, and I was also a quote-unquote gifted student. I was in a gifted academic program, so I also wanted to go to a school that was academically rigorous. So long story short, that's how I ended up attending Northwestern University. It checked all those boxes. It was a top 10 school academically, but it was also a powerhouse when it came to theater and music theater. I got into their very competitive music theater program. Several hundred people apply, only 30 get in, and I thought that I was going to have a career in the arts as a performer, as a filmmaker, that would leave me feeling fulfilled and joyful, and that proved not to be the case. Now, when I look back at why I loved this arena as a young person, I think there's a couple things that come to mind. First is I was a very lonely kid, and I was a kid who was picked on and bullied a lot, and the idea of being affirmed as an actor, as a performer, was really intoxicating. This idea that these people on the screen and on stage are beloved and they're applauded and everyone thinks they're beautiful and talented and they've got all these fans. Like, it was my young person's mind way of seeking this idea of how do I find wholeness, how do I find love, how do I find belonging. Now, I think we all know that fame doesn't actually give you that. Success in your career doesn't actually give you that. It gives you the appearance of that, but an actual deep, nourishing sense of community, brotherhood, siblinghood, belonging, not so much. Another thing that I'm aware of is, as a young boy, I was cognitively a little bit different. The term I use now is neurodivergent. I didn't operate in quite the same way, and pursuing a career as an actor also gave me a deeper understanding about how humans behaved and the normal human condition, and it helped me feel like by studying this, perhaps I can integrate better into regular society. I also think that we are often aware as young people a little bit of our life mission, but it doesn't necessarily manifest in the way that we think. Like, I think as a young person, I was called to be somebody who provided inspiration, somebody who provided light to the world in a way. And as a young person, where do we see that most? Stars, celebrities. Of course, that's what I should be doing. Now I interpret that as being a guide for others, being somebody who works on burnishing their heart, glowing from within, and using that as an inspiration for other people to help them on their journey of becoming, of rooting into their authentic self and glowing more brightly. And so in hindsight, it makes perfect sense why I would pursue a career as an actor. Now, unfortunately, the reality was very different than the expectations. And this is the thing that I think so many of us get caught up in. We choose a major, we choose a career, we choose a relationship, we choose a place to live based on expectations, based on imaginations, what we think it might be. But the reality is often very, very different. There's a wonderful book called Designing Your Life, written by 2 Stanford professors who teach a class on this. And in it, they argue that you should prototype your life. You should go and try and live the experiences you think you want to have, live the career you think you want to have as best as you can by job shadowing, by having coffee with people who work in that industry, by really getting an insider's view before you quit your current industry, before you commit to that expensive advanced advanced degree before you blow up your life in general and move across the world. And this was definitely the case for me. I can remember when I was in college getting a meeting with a big agent in LA and them sitting me down and saying, I've been in LA for 30 years and I can tell you I have 0 friends. I have people who I travel with, I have people where I go to their kids' birthdays, but I can't trust a single person and cannot be real with anyone. When I eventually ended up moving to LA, I got to have a meeting with this big manager who's like, I believe in you. I think you can have this career, but you have to give up everything. You have to give up your partner. You have to give up friends. You have to give up any extracurricular stuff. This has got to be what you eat, sleep, breathe, drink. It has to be your life 24/7. And that was actually one of the big wake-up moments for me to say, hey, I've evolved as a person and I've grown as a person, and the person I am now really prioritizes certain things. I really prioritize community, finding belonging, living authentically, having a partnership with somebody amazing who I absolutely love. I was then partnered with my now husband, then fiance, and I thought I would never want to sacrifice those things for a career as an actor. Like, what are you going to give me that at the end of my life I'm going to look back and say, yeah, that award, that fame, that recognition far outweighed having meaningful relationships and love and tenderness and all that good stuff. And so that was the end, actually. That conversation was the tipping point for me where I decided to walk away from acting. But let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about when I was a teenager and in my 20s and when I was pursuing this full out. Like, it did give me things. And I think this is the key thing to highlight, is when we make our choices about what industries we want to work in, who we want to live with, they might give you what you're seeking at that time, but they may not in the future. And the thing we always have to return back to is a cost-benefit analysis. And let's use a sports car as an example. You might be in a point in your life where leasing that very expensive sports car for, let's say, $2,000 a month is worth it for you to have the status and to have the fun of driving it. But then there may become a point where in the future you say, this is no longer worth it to me. It's sitting in the garage all the time. I don't give a fuck about who sees me in this anymore. I need to get rid of it. At that time, the cost you were paying was less than the benefits. And then at some point it switched, where the cost was no longer outweighed by the benefits and it started to feel like a burden. So when I was 20-something years old, to feel like the applause and the validation of getting cast in a role and getting that affirmation about my self-worth when I had so little, when I didn't think I was valuable, when I didn't think I was worth much, maybe that was worth it for me. Maybe it was worth it for you to take that job that was demanding 80 hours a week and working on weekends and traveling all the time and never seeing your family. Maybe it gave you the financial security you were seeking, or maybe it gave you the status or the title or whatever. But there may have come a point where it no longer was worth it, where you started to find that those things didn't matter so much to you. And if you find yourself in situations like this with your job, with your relationships, with anything in life, first I just want to give you kudos for having the strength to admit it, because that's something that so many people don't do. They live lives of what we like to call quiet desperation, that they know something is wrong, they don't feel well, they're unhappy, they're miserable, but they're not willing to admit it to themselves. So just having the wherewithal, having the strength to say, fuck, this isn't working for me, how can I do better? Can I do better? Is a phenomenal place to be, a phenomenal start to that question. The next stage of that is then having the courage to step into the liminal space, the space in between, the space where you don't know what's going to come next. You don't know what kind of career, you don't know what kind of job, you don't know what living out and proud as your authentic self is going to be like. And it's scary, it's an abyss, it's this dark room that you don't know how to navigate because your eyes haven't adjusted. It means giving up what is familiar, and that's really damn scary. And if you find yourself in that place, again, kudos to you. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of bravery to be there. And I faced this awareness. I faced the fact that, every time I'd go on an audition, I'd get physically ill afterwards. I would get so nervous and so worked up. Sometimes I'd even black out in the audition room. Like, it was like I'd have to go take a nap oftentimes afterwards. And there were some days you'd go on 3-4 auditions a day. Like, it felt so toxic to me. And the people didn't vibe with my soul. Like, I have a good friend who's an artistic director at a large equity theater, and we'll go for lunch when I'm in town, and he'll say to me, Kaylin, you're one of the few friends I have that I met in the theater, because people here can be really toxic. You think, what kind of person is willing to put up with the job instability? The amount of rejection. Even if you're a successful actor, you're still getting rejected 9 times out of 10. You're still having to apply for work every week because the gig might last for a day or for a week or maybe a couple months, but never really longer than that. If you've had to apply for a new job, you know how sucky that experience is. Imagine living that way. Like, who would tolerate that? Who would tolerate giving up their nights and weekends, traveling all the time, getting shit pay? I worked all the time as an actor in Chicago, and so many of the projects I'd work on would pay me $300. Not for the day, not for the week, but for like 3 months of work. Who would accept going on commercial audition after commercial audition for fucking bullshit stuff like weather tech floor mats for your car, competing against 400 other people who look like you, 4 rounds of callbacks for a shit commercial that's going to maybe pay you $2,000? Like, the amount of stress and time and heartache that gets involved for bullshit, like the people who are willing to accept that as life, like, you can tell they're longing for something. They need something to endure such desperate situations. I didn't want to be in that environment. I didn't want to surround myself with those people. And I can remember even in college calling my parents and crying and being like, I don't think I'm in the right major. Like, I don't feel like I fit in with these people. We don't have the same priorities. We don't have the same interests. Like, this isn't my tribe. But it's all I knew. It was a decision I made around 8 or 9 or 10 years old. It's a decision my parents helped me make because as my advisors, as my caregivers, they said, you should pursue this. You're really good at it. But it wasn't in alignment for me. And it took me years to figure that out. And that's the thing, right? Like, our brains keep developing into our early 30s. Our self-understanding keeps developing. And to go on a decision of who you thought you were and what you thought you wanted when you were a teenager, when you were in your early 20s, when you were maybe even younger, is a little bit foolhardy. I was sick and miserable as an actor. I was unhappy. And even when I finally felt like I was getting the things I wanted, when I booked a play that took me to LA, and I got an agent, and I got a manager, and I was booking projects left and right, I looked around and I didn't find anyone who resonated with me. And when I say resonated, that feeling of, I get you, I know what you're going through, oh, I love what your life experiences is, yeah, this feeds me. I didn't have any of that. I met people who were tremendously successful, I met people who were struggling. Not a single person ever made me think, gosh, I want your life. The good thing is I was able to step away from this career that I thought I needed. And I ended up moving into corporate coaching work where I was teaching leadership skills, public speaking, executive presence, empathy training, conflict resolution. And I did that for a couple of years. And while it also was not in alignment for me, looking back, everything I've done in my life has led me to here. It has led me to a life that is full and connected, doing work that I find meaningful and that I love. All the things that I learned as an actor, as a filmmaker, as a corporate coach, as a yoga teacher, as a meditation teacher, I get to integrate all that and do it here. That these weren't wrong paths, that these paths that I was walking and maybe you are walking that feel out of alignment with your heart actually gave me the skills I needed to be able to do what I'm doing now. Because all the things I loved about acting, telling a story, communicating with an audience, talking about emotions and how do we integrate our life better, like that was the fun of acting for me. I get to do that here with all of you. Filmmaking, I get to do that by editing these videos. Coaching, I get to do that here and in my one-on-one sessions. Meditation, yoga, spirituality, clearly all of that is coming into play here. And so if you find yourself in a situation in life where you are feeling out of step with your heart, out of step with your truth, if you feel like I felt, which is my soul is being crushed, I'm going to lose myself if I stay where I am, trust that maybe this isn't wrong, that it isn't that you chose poorly, so much as you chose what you could at that time as best you could with the information you were given, and you're going to use what these situations gave you as you move forward, that it is going to serve you well as you move into greater alignment with your true self, as you come into your power, as you come into congruency with your mission and your values and your desires, and that looking back, it's all going to seem worth it. It's all going to make sense. That is my hope and my wish for you. And if you feel confused about that process, or if it feels like too great of a leap to take, find someone to help you. I mean, yeah, you could work with me, but I always tell people, I'm not the right guide for everyone. Go find the coach, go find the therapist, go find the career counselor, go find the shaman, the exorcist, the priest, whoever you need to find that will help you reconnect with your truth, find better congruency between your heart and your external life, and live a life that matters. Because at the end of the day, we only have this one life. Like, maybe we have past and future lives. Who cares? You only have this life to be living today. And as you progress through it, do you want to look back and be able to say, heck yeah, I was brave. I made the courageous choice. I did the thing that made me feel good in the long run. Or do you want to say, I settled. I gave up my potential for safety. I chose that which was familiar over that which was fulfilling. And no judgment if that's where you find yourself now, because again, we've all been there. I certainly have been there. But the great news is, You can always choose differently. Today is a fresh day to choose a new perspective, to make a new start, and to find a way of living that makes you say, hell yeah! And that's what I wish for you. I'm Kalen. This is Ecstatic Self. I hope this was helpful. Blessings to you.